me.
She's a former mayor. They're a former evangelical pastor with dissociative identity disorder. These two like to talk about the topics you're not supposed to talk about. They might cause you to perspire just a bit, but they'll definitely make you inspired. Let's talk religion and politics, and what spirituality and emotional well-being look like in a post-evangelical world. This is Paul and Ashley on Evangelicalish.
We are here and ready to go, and it is Wednesday night Evangelicalish, and the commenters are already flying through, and it's a good night to be here.
Warming up the space tonight.
Warming up the space.
Doug on the left, good to see you. Stephanie, Christine is here. It's been a while for her, she says, for them. Alex, all the way from Brisbane, Australia.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Do you think it's Brisbane?
I'm from Arkansas. I say Brisbane.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm guessing you're probably right. Brisbane.
You say Tejon for
Tejon, yes.
Tejon,
I mean,
Tejon Ranch. Yeah.
Less and less. By the way, I think our little open, every time I hear that, I think the lady says that they may make you perspire, but they'll also make you conspire. Thinking that this is like a conspiracy theory.
We used to sing that in the Christmas song. Later on, we'll perspire instead of conspire as we dream by the fire. Yeah. Hi, Stephanie. Good to see you. We haven't prepped our usual prep for the show, so who knows what's going to happen. But I'm going to start the show. I know what your answer will be, so this is theater, but this is one of the big divisive questions of our culture today. So I hate to start us out this way, but candy corn or not candy corn? It's one of the big cultural questions of our day. Your answer to the question, it's right up there with Ginger or Marianne, Republican, Democrat. So
I've always been a pumpkin person because I love a candy corn so much that like
but to candy corn, you're a yes.
I love candy corns, and I think the pumpkin, it's like you get more in your mouth with one piece, and so I've always gravitated towards the pumpkins. But I have to tell you, last week I went to this amazing local farmers market event that my organization put on, and there was so much fresh produce. And I was like, gosh darn it, I don't want this to go to waste. So I spent all weekend eating like fresh vegetables, produce, all these kinds of good things. And you know what? My sweet, like I can feel the craving less, but in you walked with those goddamn candy corns the other night. And I was like, tell you what, produce, I'm going to put you down and I'm going to instead have some candy corn. So I took 3 pumpkins at once in my mouth, and it was a little overwhelming, like too much, too sweet.
See, there's Pucky that says no candy corn. There are people that hate candy corn.
Yeah. No, I think that's probably one of our early bonding things for you and me 30 plus years ago was like candy corn. Yes. Okay. Well, let's go on a date.
I've never been a huge Halloween person, except for the fact that I get candy corn.
No. And listen, I think you probably go to the drugstore every week looking for the candy corns. And the first time they come out, you come home with like these big bags. And you know what I really love are the apple flavored candy corn.
Oh, you do? Yeah.
I love those.
I'm just the regular, but I love, the pizza shaped ones, because then I always eat the white, and then the yellow, and then the orange.
You're like this, like
yeah. But yeah, nobody's ambivalent on candy corn. You either love them or you hate them. It's just the way it is.
Do you know that sugar is like literally like the worst toxin you can put in your body, and yet here we are, just like
worse than cyanide?
Yes. Yes.
I love how you say yes.
I I love how I know you and you're just like, whatever I say that's like a big declaration, you're like, let me prove you're wrong. And like, then you say this really dramatic thing. And I was, yeah.
Well, that's
I
you.
do
You
not
always
back
make
down.
these dramatic statements. It's the worst talking. Well, cyanide will kill you in like seconds.
Let's say it this way. The worst edible toxin you can put in your body.
I can eat cyanide.
And survive.
And survive. Okay. I can go with that.
The worst survivable toxin you can put in your body is sugar. So we need to not.
You could just say, do you know that sugar is like, it's not just bad for you. It's not just fattening. It's like really bad. You really need to.
Same diff.
You have to.
Same diff.
The Ashleyism is, it's the worst toxin you. We've done this for 30 years.
30 years and 10 months. 30 years. Well, our first date was June 16th, 1993. So, alcohol. I feel like alcohol may not be worse. Like, isn't some pure alcohol good for you?
Well, I've heard that red wine is good for you. Red wine is supposed to like be a workout for your heart.
Okay. Also, jogging is a workout for your heart.
Yes. And red wine is supposed to be like jogging. That's what they say.
Oh, really?
And white wine is like filled with sugar.
Sure.
So, yeah.
I had some wine last night. This is so off topic. I had some wine last night.
Did you drink it in your God's Not Mad at You wine?
No, but check this out. Look this is like old school merch.
Old school, nonpartisan evangelical.
This is like, we need to send a free book to anybody who can acknowledge that they ever first knew of this brand, Paul Swearingen brand, the nonpartisan evangelical. That was back when you were like innocent and slightly kind towards both sides of the aisle.
I'm not sure.
No more. No, you
were.
Anyway, I had this wine last night that was organic, red organic wine. And they say that it's not supposed to have the same, like give you a headache or whatever the next day. And I have to say, I think that was probably, I felt like I had slightly been hit by a Mack truck, but they missed my head. The truck just got my body. That's how I felt this morning when I woke up.
Okay. And speaking of 30 years together, sorry, trying to make a transition here. Tomorrow is
someone's birthday.
Hello.
Someone's birthday. Tomorrow is September 26th, we celebrate the birth of Paul Swearingen, and we also celebrate the birth of Paul Swearingen's son, Samuel Thomas Swearingen.
Correct. Yes, he was my son was born on my birthday. Is that crazy? And if you've watched 1946, the movie, Rocky Roggio, she was born on her dad's birthday.
Oh, I missed that. I've seen the movie 6 times. You would think I would remember that, but
you don't remember that? Okay.
That's right. At the end when they're sitting in the recliners. Yeah. So it's your birthday. What do you want for your birthday, Paul?
Well, if anybody's been watching their email, if you're on my e-Inspire list, or it's now Inspire You list, or on my social media, you've seen that I'm asking for a share. I'm asking people to take my modern day parable, Religious Right, Religiously Wrong. There, if you're watching, you see it. And take a picture of yourself with it or a video, whatever is uniquely you, and tell why you love the book. And if you got the email from me, or if you want to go on my website, I tell you, Ashley is typing again for those of you that can't see.
Stop it.
I mean, we can hear it so loudly.
So
I have to
quiet.
I have to tell the people who are listening on audio what's happening. It's so loud. You would not believe it. You should listen to the podcast sometime and see what happens.
I should listen. I don't listen. I just talk it. I don't do it. I don't listen.
So yes, I want you to make a video or take a picture of yourself with the book and tell people why you love it. And if you haven't had a chance to read the book, in the email I sent out or on our website, it tells, like, you can, a few chapters you can just scan to get a feel for it. And then you can, you'll get a good feel for it. And the chapters are very short, and you can tell people why you love the book, or tell people you're excited to read it and you've read just something, and do that for my birthday tomorrow. And you can give it a review on Amazon, or you can buy one for a friend, or you can become a $5.99 subscriber on my website, or all of the above, and say, happy birthday, Pastor Paul. Big 5'9" tomorrow.
5'9".
I can't
oh my gosh, that's
59
exciting. That means we have a year to plan the big 6-0. More importantly, but
the
also
big 6-0.
I am curious, has anyone done this yet, or are you saying do it exactly on your birthday?
People have done various versions of it, but I'm really hoping for just like a fucking blowout on my birthday.
Fucking break the internet tomorrow.
Yeah, where people are just like, okay, I'll buy the book already. Good God.
Presidential election, who cares? We are all talking about this book instead.
So Stephanie says on the live stream here, my uncle was born on Jesus' birthday, and my dad always said that's why he thought he was God. No, I get this, but I was going to make the joke of, how do you know when Jesus' birthday was? Because one day I know is not Jesus' birthday, and that's December 25th. Jesus could not have been born on December 25th. But I'm assuming that's what Stephanie is saying. Her dad was born on Christmas.
So I'm curious, what are some of the reactions people are posting about the book? What stands out to them?
I haven't seen anybody do that. They've just most people are just posting my picture that I put up with the book today and saying, happy birthday. So,
that's
which is fine. I appreciate that.
Fun.
But
well, kind of in honor of your birthday, I also, just because I wanted to, I started rereading the book. Because you did, it's like edition 2 or something. I mean, you made some edits we
revised it a little bit. Yeah.
And so I'm rereading it, and it's just bringing back a lot of memories.
It is sort of our autobiography, isn't it?
It is
semi-autobiographical.
And I don't it's like, as time has gone by, and now I'm reading this again, it is even more intensely. I feel those memories more intensely than just soon after they happened or something. It's kind of weird.
It is kind of weird.
But yes, I mean, gosh, I was telling Paul yesterday, I think at one of our shows, we should have some people, you all kind of know, if you know anything about the book, it is an amalgamation of characters and a series of some true things that happened, and certainly a true kind of overall story that we experienced here in our own community. And then Paul took that and wove it together and added all these things and just created this beautiful tapestry story. But there are some people who oh yeah, so-and-so inspired this, this person was there when this happened, that we should see about putting together a little panel or cabaret of those people and have them interview them. That'd be fun.
People who have asked me, I've always said I will neither confirm nor deny.
Well, I mean the what's it called? The protagonist only. We can't call out the antagonist. We can't be like, hello, so-and-so, did you know that you are character A, B, or C asshole in Paul's book? Would you please be on this podcast? We can't do that. It'd be like, oh, you're the inspirational character. Come on and let's talk about your real story.
Well, actually, the central protagonist of the book, Saul, I wouldn't tell who that person is. And that person is a little bit of an amalgamation, but it's mainly one person.
But also I feel because I remember you answered this question once. Somebody asked you, are you Saul? Are you Joseph? Are you this person? And you answered, I think I'm kind of all of those people.
That is a little bit true. I'm a little bit of every of Saul, of Isaac, who's on son. A quest to find truth. Patty, the wife, who's kind of done with it all. And gosh, I can't remember. Elsa.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I'm probably a little bit of all of those
Wow.
characters.
And Meg's comment here says that your book inspired her deconstruction, started it, which is awesome.
How beautiful is that?
That's
Wow.
remarkable. And also now that you can look back and know that you have DID and you do have different parts of your personality. So when you say like, yeah, these are kind of all me, does it have a more intense or different meaning to you?
Wow, I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, it really does, doesn't it? Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I can remember so intensely the really what started the book. And that was 2007, the Defensive Marriage Rally in Fresno, California.
I think it was 2008.
Was it 8?
Yeah, I think it was like the campaign
was the election in
was,
08?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it was a prop on the California ballot to ban gay marriage in California. And a couple of our megachurch pastors in Fresno and our mayor, which was not Ashley at the time, she was running for mayor at the time, were on the steps of City Hall doing a defensive marriage rally. And one of our local TV stations was reporting on it. I was watching the news that afternoon, and they were doing a report on it. And I was just sitting there, and I was really in the start of my political deconstruction. If not the start, I probably was a little further along in my political deconstruction than my religious deconstruction. And they show this cutaway shot, and there's this police tape, the do not cross yellow police tape. And there's some people behind it with like a pride flag and some signs. And the announcer on the TV station says, and there were some protesters on hand for the event as well. And I just remember hearing sort of spiritually inside me, I would have said, hearing from Jesus back in those days, and just a voice inside that kind of said, if I were there, do you think I would be on the stage with the mayor and those pastors, or would I be behind that tape with those protesters? And I imagined Jesus asking me that question. And I just thought, without question, Jesus would not be on the stage with those pastors and that mayor. He would be over there behind that tape with those protesters that I assumed were LGBTQIA plus people and their allies. And it just struck me and stayed with me forever. And I always knew, like, if I ever write a book, that's going to be in there.
Golly gee, I remember that like it was yesterday. And if Jesus was in my head in that moment, which I guess maybe Jesus was, I don't know. But like, I can now be like, oh, I can feel that so different. At that time, I think I would have felt conflict around that. I think I would have felt, I know I would have felt like, oh, like the heart of God that I've experienced, the connection I've felt with who I believe Jesus to be, my heart would be behind the police tape. But then I would have other voices in my head saying like, but the Bible says, which we talked all about, right? But the Bible says lines last week, so we don't have to revisit that. But that's so interesting now because 16 years later, holy cow.
I know, it's incredible.
Yeah. I feel so differently, and I can remember feeling that way, but I just feel like such a different person maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think even with me, there was still a wrestle of, for me, it might be around being a pastor. Would I officiate a same gender marriage?
Yeah.
And probably to save my church, I probably would have had to say no at that time. And I'm embarrassed by that. Now I would gladly say, absolutely.
Well,
absolutely.
I have to tell you, one of the things, if not the thing that I most admire and appreciate about you is your courage. And I don't know if you would have, but I mean, there were a lot of things that if you were trying to save our church, you would have done differently.
Yeah.
In all of those years of pastoring. So I don't know. I know that if you when you have conviction on something, and you normally have conviction early in a I think you would. Or maybe I'd say, here's what I could see you doing. I could see you saying like understanding and wrestling with the question, and then having people, because people in our church would be like, oh, but Paul, and we love your heart, but you really shouldn't do that, da, 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 da. And you probably wouldn't, but then you'd be mad. You'd be mad at people around you who told you not to do it. So it's like you would confess your courage, but you might do something different. I don't know. That's kind of
Ashley, in 2014, running for state controller, as close as any Republican has been to winning a statewide office in California in a long time, pretty close.
There were 2 or 3 people who were close that year.
Was quoted in one of the newspapers in the state as being in support of marriage equality. I think that was your quote. Created a kerfuffle in our church, and particularly in my staff. And so I had to deal with it from the pulpit on Sunday morning. And I basically said, I can't remember exactly how I put it, but I know I was very much in the, hey, let me tell you, the way we treat people in gay issues in the church is not Christ-like. And I don't remember exactly how I framed it, but it was somewhere in that area. But let me, and I think it was 2 families that generally sat together, got up and walked out in the service. And it was about 10% of the church's giving got up and left the church, right?
Yeah.
In the middle of the sermon. So yeah, I guess I took a stand, and, and there was just this whole thing around like, well, if he's really hearing God, he should know the answer on this, kind of a thing. So,
well, okay. I don't remember exactly the way you framed it, but this is what I remember about that Sunday. I'll bet you these sermons are somewhere. Don't you think?
Probably. Yeah, I probably
we could find it. It'd be, in 2014, and it would be
this is
after
God is not mad at you, water bottle. Yeah.
After that was like so not subtle. Is that like subliminal advertising or something? Like product placement?
Subliminal would be I wouldn't say anything about it.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure you know that you did say that. So like sometimes the mouth is open and you're not aware that it's coming out. But you did say that. Anyway, we could find it, but I remember sitting on the front row that day and thinking this is one of the best sermons I've ever heard you preach. It was so freaking good. And I remember being like, yeah, like, oh yeah. I had no idea that people were getting up and walking out the back. I was like, victory, hallelujah, Jesus is here. This is so great. And I just was like, it was irrefutable to me what you preached that day. And and then I later learned that not everybody saw it the same way. So
well, let's get to our topic today, which is, now that we've burned 24 minutes of the show.
Which, by the way, is your pet peeve, that people waste so much time getting into the topic of their podcast. So we've
but it's done that. It's like the Holy Post talks about like news from the butt, and stuff. We actually talked about something of weight there about on the book, So our topic today is patriotism. Is it a Christian attribute? When I was growing up, patriotism was really important. On, the Sunday around the 4th of July, we would sing Battle Hymn of the Republic, the national anthem, Veterans Day. We would do things to honor veterans in the church service. Patriotism was, by my view as a child, a gift of the Holy Spirit, love, joy, patience, kindness, peace, and patriotism. How was it for you growing up? Is patriotism an attribute of Christianity? If you accept Jesus as your savior, you will be a patriotic American.
So here's what I recall when I was growing up in the Southern Midwest, okay, so like mid 70s to late 80s, in the Southern Baptist Conference. Absolutely remember, American flag on the stage, you know, God bless America. That kind of, like, yeah, I got you. But my parents didn't really, they didn't really preach that in our home. So I was just like a little kid bored in church, doodling on the tithe envelope, or maybe even in the hymnal or Bible, the church's Bible in front of me. But so I know, it's like I'm aware of that. But then our family took we went down a different tributary of the American Christendom stream. And that was this charismatic Jesus culture, shed the denominations, like shed the structure. It's not a religion, it's a relationship. And we went to California. We went like west. And then we landed in churches and in environments that were like, hey, we're, all that stuff is secular. We removed ourselves. We were all about just like stand in the corner and worship, and it's just you and Jesus. And that was also an extreme, right? Like, it's so, now I look back and see, like, that's so odd too. I don't know. It's just odd, because then, I end up being in community work and community development, and not even really about like, and Pledge of Allegiance. It was just more like, hey, this place, etc. But I end up being in civic and governmental stuff. And I had to kind of find a way to justify why I was getting involved in the man-made secular structures. I found I had to justify that to my Christian brothers and sisters in the charismatic, let's just all get on the holy roller cloud and peel right out of here world. So kind of two maybe extremes that we're lifting.
But weren't our charismatic friends the Seven Mountains people?
Well, but that's so weird. Okay, now we're just like going on the journey here, because let's imagine that there's this diversion, in our two worlds, and you were still in this heavy denominational structure, and like you could see this, heavy stuff the whole time. I went down into this like charismatic world where we're all above it and we're just floating around in like Jesus bubbles. Then that group, because of its like, spiritual gifts and prophecy and God tells us stuff and all of these things, then it starts to be this, one of the prophecies that comes up a lot in this group over here in our 10 plus years or so hanging out with these folks is this Seven Mountain stuff. Well, then that starts to look like this kind of charismatic, like we should control things, using governmental systems to impose your religious views. Well, so that kind of brings it full
God
circle.
has made us kings over society.
That kind of brings it like, then by 2016, it's like, boom, these things have completely lined up and connected, and the sort of voting block that we now would think of as like evangelical right or like Christian nationalism, like that fully sort of got seared together by Trump land in 2016.
Very much in the Protestant world. And it really wasn't what I grew up in, but the Protestant world, until Jimmy Carter came along and, was born again, there really was this idea of like, no, our job is just to get people saved, and we don't get involved in that worldly politics stuff.
Yep.
I found a video of a pastor who was kind of what you were talking about, you grew up in. And I think this is kind of interesting. So let me play a little bit of this guy. I think this is a Baptist for sure. For those who are listening and not watching, lots of suits and ties. One of those churches where there's a bunch of people sitting on the stage while the pastor is preaching. It looks very much like where I grew up. But not necessarily a patriotic message. So here goes.
Some of you bring politics into the church. You think that politics is spiritual stuff.
Let me stop it for a second. Can you hear that okay, Ashley?
Well, it's like a reverb on it.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So like turn volume down somewhere.
Okay. Let me see if I mute my mic, if that'll help with that.
Politics is of this world. You think it's your duty to be political about this, that, and the other. No, your duty is to serve the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, body, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Don't be talking to me about my spiritual responsibility to vote. I don't have a spiritual responsibility to vote. I have a civic privilege. Don't be telling me that voting is spiritual. See, that's what happens when you don't read and pray. When you don't read and pray, you say, wow, there's a Bible out now that includes the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Isn't that wonderful? No. No, it's disgusting. It's blasphemous. It's a ploy. Are you kidding me? Some of you are so encouraged by that. Let me tell you something. The gospel is not an American gospel. It is the gospel of the Lord Jesus.
All right, I'll stop it there, but that's kind of the gist of it.
Do you know, like, I'm so grateful that this person is saying this. I assume, because obviously we don't prep for the show. Obviously, I'd not seen the clip before you just played it, but like I thought that was going to go in a very different direction. A very different direction. Now, I want to talk about, I wrote this down, voting isn't spiritual. I want to revisit that. But I'm so grateful that that person is calling out this corrupted view of voting, and Jesus says to vote a certain way. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah, I don't think that our theology exactly lines up with where he is, but yes, I am, I would never allow an American flag in our church when I was the senior pastor. I had somebody come and say, I noticed we don't have a flag. We need a flag. I'll buy one for the church. And I'm like, no, I won't let it come into our church. And he said, well, how about if we just put it in the foyer? I'm like, no, this is when we come into this church. And Jesus said, I have the verse here somewhere. John 18:36, Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest. And it says by the Jewish leaders here. That was probably added by somebody later because they didn't want the Romans to get angry for writing it this way. Jesus says, but now my kingdom is from another place. So we're not in the world of American politics when we entered the church. We're in the church of Jesus Christ, which is not of this world. And I felt it was really important to emphasize that when we were in the community gathering of the church. And so I would not allow an American flag in there.
Yeah. And it's weird.
In the live feed, Suzanne came and was like, I have to leave. And now Suzanne is saying, oh, I can't leave now. So,
hey, that's what we call stickiness.
Stickiness. Got it. Good.
It's actually kind of odd to me that there was somebody at any time in our church that even thought they should talk to. I mean, it's like when you start your own church, it's got your own DNA. I'm surprised whoever this was even thought that was going to be a good idea, and then it wouldn't go anywhere.
I'm not surprised though. I mean, evangelical churches, you go in all the time and it has that silly Christian flag on one side, white with what is it, like a red box or blue box and a red cross?
Well, that's Doug on the left is just asking. That's the Christian flag.
That's they have the Christian flag, and then they'll have the American flag on the other side.
No, I obviously
almost every Protestant church you go to.
No, but I'm in evangelical churches, but not in the sort of charismatic, non-denominational, like let's all just be together in our living rooms kind of church, like that's
those
kind of more
still evangelical churches.
No, I'm saying but to me, it's unusual that a person in our church at that time would have thought, seems like they would have known you better, is my point.
Yeah.
But I have not heard of a pledge to the Bible. Is there such a thing? Doug on the left is commenting feelings about the Christian flag or the pledge to the Bible. Huh.
Well, I hate the Christian flag because I don't think there should be a Christian flag.
There shouldn't be a Christian flag. Like, no, come on.
And most of the time I've seen the Christian flag, it's with singing like Onward Christian Soldiers or some horrifying song like that.
It's pretty bad.
But I've never heard a pledge to the Bible.
Okay. So okay, let's just for a second, maybe I'm drawing too much hope from this pastor, this preacher. Like, maybe are people starting to wake up? Are we starting to see some cracks in this bizarre world that has been constructed all around us? You think maybe there's a thawing out starting to happen?
So here's the thing. He is saying, and rightly so, like, the Constitution should not be in the Bible. They are not the same thing. But also, like, his position is, I think he would say, we're, again, back to that, we're about saving souls, not about worrying about this worldly government thing. Now, I think you and I, particularly you, would disagree with that as a theology, and particularly since Jeremiah 29:7 was such an important scripture to us. And I believe there's very much in the Bible about judgment of people groups, and talk about how this idea of justice for the poor, the foreigner, the marginalized, and the economically disadvantaged is judged in nations, and nations which were city-states back in the Hebrew scriptural times and the New Testament first century. So I think it behooves us then, if that's how judgment spiritually happens on a people group, which is where I think principalities reside, then we must care about what the government does, what the heart of the government is towards the poor, the foreigner, the marginalized, and the economically disadvantaged. And when, say, if you had, like, I don't know, a presidential candidate saying Haitians eat dogs and cats, the culture should rise up and say, no, that is not how we look at the marginalized. We are not okay with this. That is not what Jesus would do. And we repudiate it, or else we set ourselves up to be a racist people group. And spiritually, there is a price to be paid for that heart. So that's where I think we would diverge from.
Totally. And I love that you just said that, and I want to kind of bucket it. Like, your perspective is, if you look at scripture, there's talk that God looks and sees whole groups of people, whole nations, whole communities, whole civilizations, and it looks for a collective heart towards the things that we would say like are on God's heart, right? So there's that's more of this collective kind of thing. I'm going to talk about an individual, like why I actually think voting is spiritual as an individual, and how I think it is it could, I don't think it has to be this way for everybody. I'll just say how it is for me. But first I have to say, in the chat, we're seeing so many great comments. We now know about the pledge to the Christian flag, the pledge to the Bible. There's so many pledges. The pledge to the Awanas. I had no idea.
There's a pledge to the Awanas?
Apparently, I'm reading about it in the live stream chat, which is a little commercial for those of you who may be catching this on the download. Join us sometime live. It's awfully fun to jump in. So we're Wednesday, 6 o'clock.
Joel Osteen
Pacific
used to have
time.
a pledge to the Bible too.
I'll bet you there's a pledge to Joel Osteen. What do you bet? Anyway, but Peter is saying they didn't have the Christian flag where he grew up, etc. But you were in the northern, kind of the Great Lakes region, it looks like. Did I read that right? But Michigan and Ohio. So I was in a Baptist church, and my best friend was Methodist in the South. They absolutely had Christian flags, Baptist and Methodist. So I think maybe this is also a regional culture thing, which kind of gets to your point, Paul, about like sort of this whole people group thing. Now, back to what I was going to say. By the way, I just did the Donald Trump weave there, in case you were I want style points for how I just said.
What did he say the other day? I'm a genius. I bring it all together at the end.
It's called the weave, and English scholars marvel at my weave, which every woman is hearing that thinking he's talking about his wig, which also you might marvel at Donald Trump's weave. But not his word.
In his little imaginary world, brilliant minds are always like, wow, sir, none of us ever thought about that before. And of course, they always call him sir.
Right. That's talk about jumping into his mind, where his parts call himself sir. Okay. Yes. So here's what I was going to say. All right. Here's why so voting for me is a spiritual practice, because it is a moment in time, or, like whatever. It is a deliberate moment where I'm stopping for a second and I'm thinking to myself, I'm not the center of the universe. I live in a community. And in my community, we are deciding these issues together. And we have choices as to who we think will be best at certain jobs. And I have to stop and think that I'm a part of a collective. I am a part of a bigger thing than just myself. In my spiritual upbringing, to me, everything that I loved about the Christian faith and the expression of Christ's love was all about how Jesus paid it all. Like, he loved people, he sacrificed himself, and I loved that sacrificial love. So I actually think that democracy, a system in which people have to come together, understand where each other's coming from, and like try to listen and reason with one another, not saying this is our practice in our society, but the intention and like what it is supposed to be like, is a moment where we're supposed to be thinking about not just ourselves, but other people. I can't think of nothing on earth besides like a mother or a parent loving their child or something like that, that is more of an expression of what I thought the Christian faith was supposed to be than caring for the collective, which for me, voting is the basis of it. So I think it's totally spiritual, but here's what has been corrupted. It is not spiritual for anybody to say, in the name of Jesus, you must vote this way. That is a political, we used to call it in our preaching days, we would call it a political spirit or a political mindset. And you would preach all the time about this, that the political or religious, which is kind of two sides of the same coin, that indeed was the very thing that was blocking the free flow of the Holy Spirit as best we understood it. That the control, the manipulation, the prescription of you have to think this way. And that is 100% man-made and not spiritual. I remember wrestling with one of my final political decisions I had to make was who was going to succeed me in office in the city of Fresno in 2016.
Who you would endorse, because
correct.
You didn't get to choose your successor.
That's right. Yeah. So it's like the decision is who do I want to look to constituents and say like, hey, everybody, that's, we've been tracking together for 8 years. Here's who I think is best to follow, in this role. And it was down to 2 people. I knew the consequences of, supporting one person over the other, all these sorts of things, all of the threats that were being, if you do this, so-and-so is going to be after you for the rest of your life, all these things. And I remember kind of going oh, maybe I should think about those things, whatever. And I just was gripped in that moment. And I was like, wait a second, this is what my husband and I have stood up to for our entire lives. I'm not going to start now making a political calculation because so-and-so might be mad. And by the way, there is freedom. You have freedom to choose who you think is the best. And in a democratic society, you yield to the wisdom of the group. So anyway, all this to say, I think voting for me is spiritual, but for a totally different reason than what we've seen corrupted and portrayed as faith in voting these last long number of years.
Yeah. Gosh, I had something I was going to say on that, and I forgot it now that I was reading something on here. But Dennis on our live feed says, does one's faith inform governmental policy in its care of the people, or is it a tool by those seeking power and has nothing to do with Jesus / the church? Oh, I remember what I was going to say. A Christian would say taking the Lord's name in vain means, shouting Jesus Christ as a swear word.
Yeah.
But taking the Lord's name in vain literally means like using God's name as a curse inappropriately. And so to say, vote Republican or else God will be mad at you, that is taking the Lord's name in vain.
Boom. Yeah. That's such a great point. I never thought of that. I thought, that's a really powerful point.
It's why God damn it is the penultimate cuss word, because you're saying, I'm using the name of Jehovah to call a curse down on your head.
Which, by the way, I do think there are things that God should damn. It's why I choose to use that phrase sometimes.
But to really answer Dennis's question, let me present a Bible verse, and this particularly in Hebrew scripture, but also in the New Testament, we see this over and over and over again, that how a community group treats people is the judgment of that community group over and over again. So this is Jeremiah 5. This is a time when the prophets are running around in Israel, and this is in Hebrew scripture, what Christians colonizingly call the Old Testament, but is actually the Torah of our Jewish friends. And Jeremiah is the one prophet who's saying, no, Babylon's going to overtake us. The other prophets are all saying, no, make Israel great again. We're too important to God. He won't let the Babylonians take us over. And Jeremiah is saying, no, we've forgotten the poor, the foreigner, the marginalized, and the widow, the economically disadvantaged. We are going to be taken over. And so here we are in Jeremiah 5, verse 27. Jeremiah says, their houses are full of deceit. They have become rich and powerful and have grown fat and sleek. He's talking about, in general, the powerful of the country of Israel, of the people group. They've become rich and powerful, have grown fat and sleek. Their evil deeds know no limit. They do not seek justice. They do not promote the case of the fatherless. And he keeps talking about all these things. And he says, should I not punish them for this, declares the Lord? Should I not avenge myself on a nation such as this? A horrible and shocking thing has happened in the land. The prophets prophesy lies, and the priest or the leaders rule by their own authority, and my people love it this way. But what will you do in the end? So I think that is all about if we do not seek justice for the poor, the foreigner, the immigrants that come to our border, the marginalized, the LGBTQ plus society, the economically disadvantaged, those that don't have access to the economic system like the rest of us do. Spiritually, we cannot prosper well and elongatedly, if that's a word, as a people group.
I think it's not.
Probably not, but you get my point.
Elongatedly.
All right, you're losing the point here in the midst of it.
But listen, what you're saying is it's so beautiful and powerful. And, it kind of brings me back to, in my deconstructed state, I have such a higher value for just like another human being that is a container for, life, spark of the divine, whatever you want to call it. Like that is so precious and treasured to me today, different from when I was in my sort of evangelical frame. I was always just like me and God, God and me. It was always just like sort of vertical thing. And then any sort of connection outside of that, besides family, was like I had an agenda. And what I hear you saying in all of that is sort of this: God is looking at whole groups, whole nation, whatever, and the collective heart attitude, and whether or not we see each other, to use kind of a popular social justice expression. Like, do you see the people around you? Do you see that they too, contain the same life force, love, whatever you want to call it, like in them? And just like zooming out, like that's what God is looking at. And
Right.
and it's a really big difference between like, okay, can we as a people decide we're going to see each other, value each other, and have policy debates on the best way to ensure that we're lifting the poor, the marginalized, the widowed? Of course we can. Can we have, but
if I can jump in right there, just like, we can manage our southern border. We have a right to do that. But we need to do it with a heart that says we care about these people. We understand perhaps even the role that we've played in causing the conditions that have brought them here. And so our heart has to be that we care about human beings, and we want to do right by the people coming here. And so so the idea of caging people and having a system where we lose children in the system, which I think I read the other day, there's something like 300,000 children that we don't know where their parents are, that we separated from their parents at the border.
How many did you say that you heard?
Like 300,000 or something.
No,
it's some crazy
it's
number.
not that. No, I don't think it's that big of a number.
Not that much? Okay.
I'm saying it both because I don't think that's the number, and I also pray to God that's not the number. I'm pretty sure
it was a
that's
big
an
number,
overstate.
I remember. But
one is a big number in this case, right? Like two, so anyway, but just flagging that, I don't think that's the number.
So it's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
By the way, I heard the other day that somebody prominent wrote in college this paper, and they said, we as conservatives don't trust the government to regulate our food, and we're going to trust them to have a mass deportation of undocumented immigrants. Right? And do you know who wrote that?
Wait, hold on. Somebody that went to college, you said?
Yeah, in college they wrote this paper.
Well, wait. I was going to say Donald Trump, but I don't think he actually ever wrote anything.
No, he didn't write. He paid somebody to go to school for him, so he wouldn't have written it.
Yeah, so I don't know.
J.D. Vance.
JD. JD.
But yeah, so I think with abortion, we can argue about where the line is of when, or something like that. With nuance, as long as our heart is, we care about women, we care about people. Okay, Doug says 1,400. Okay, that's a much smaller number.
About that. But again,
but still, that's a staggering number.
One is too many. So
1,400 children who came into this country, we separated from their parents, and we now don't know who their parents are or how to put the children back with their parents.
Well, and probably that point is like we can talk about the best way to make sure these intentions, like to Meg, your comment about like joking about, or maybe not joking about, getting close to socialism. I mean, we can have debates over what's the best way to ensure opportunity, how to, what are the real truths about, there is really not such a thing as meritocracy, we should be debating those things, and they should come from the heart of, because we care about the whole, we care about the collective, and we understand that like I can't make other people's decisions for them, and like they have to choose the way they're going to run their life, etc. But I think yesterday when we were talking about this in the kitchen, if we did have any show prep, it was at 9:00 last night, bending over the kitchen sink, eating jujubes that I got at the farmer's market. But you were saying but I just don't trust, I don't trust our hearts. We have had such a long period of time where our let's come and reason together is Congress, or it's a political sector. and you don't feel like people who are saying that they're hard, like, I really believe in trickle down and like, so that is a really important point, is like our trust fabric is completely blown apart.
Yeah. The idea that the poor are poor because they deserve to be poor is a terrifying belief system. And I do believe there is a process by which the wealthy love to get the poor to battle against each other for small bits of the pizza pie, while the wealthy really do keep the largest chunk of it. And so, like what people are writing in the chat, if you can get the poor or the middle class upset at Haitians for eating dogs and cats, when the real problem is the wealthy are really not paying their fair share of taxes, then you've accomplished something there. And we were, one of the things we were talking about in the kitchen the other night is how I hear from Christians a lot, like, oh, we care about the poor. We have a backpack drive at the start of the school year, and we have a turkey giveaway at Thanksgiving, and we checked that box. But taking care of the poor, it doesn't mean the government comes and steals my money and doles it out through these programs. And I'm saying, oh no, that Jeremiah 5 and hundreds of other passages, like the Ruth and Boaz story. Boaz was not allowed by rule in his community to harvest the edges of his field. Why? Because those were reserved for the poor and the foreigner to harvest for their ability to survive, because they did not have access to the economic system. If the gleaners dropped some of the harvest as they were harvesting, they were not allowed to pick it up. That had to be left behind for the poor and the foreigner. That the temple collected a tithe for the poor, that had to be given. So this idea that our collective of taxes going to help the poor is not biblical is total bullshit, and is said by somebody who's been terrified by the word socialism and doesn't understand what it really means, I think.
So let's go back to the top of this this trailhead, shall we? And the clip that you played, and the is voting spiritual, etc. And because I know we're going to have to land the plane here pretty quickly. Yeah. Between now and election day, if we were to have a plan for our weekly gatherings such as these, I would say we should just kind of keep pressing in on what is the spiritual practice for this season of elections. And I would love to get people's feedback on this. As you're, if you have absentee voting or anything, voting's going to start in the next week. Think of it this way, if you haven't before. Really just take a little bit of quiet time, have some meditation time, and before you start reading about ballot measures and reading profiles of candidates, just set your heart and mind and focus on the district that you're voting in for whatever the issue or candidate is, and just start imagining what would it look like for this place to be elevated, to be its collective best self. What would it look like if we were flowing with love and not fear? Just really meditate on that. And you let us know if it doesn't totally, if something just doesn't come to life inside you when you think that way about your place, the candidates, the people stepping forward saying they wanted to, let's see what happens. Let's do a little experiment on voting as a spiritual practice, but not in a vote, controlling manipulation, et cetera, but in a what's possible here, and honoring the fact that this is a way in which we get to come together as a whole. And that to me is actually quite sacred.
Mm. Yeah. Love that. Love that.
So we'll see. We'll inspire something.
and I'm going to do a video, I think this week or next, on what is patriotism, and how there's this idea of America, love it or leave it. And to me, that's not patriotism. That's blind fealty. Patriotism is, I love my country so much, I want it to be better.
Right.
I want its heart to be good. And so I'm going to be challenging my own heart and make sure my heart is good.
But
and so that I can be part of that collective.
I think that's really good. I think I would there's another turn on that, and another way to consider that phrase, like America, love it or leave it. It's like, okay, let's set aside the who's loving and who's leaving. Let's just stop with that, because that feels just like a weird sort of power struggle. Let's actually just think for a second about what is America. And if it's like, oh my God, it is this amazing place where, as best as has been lived out so far on earth, there are these democratic practices that do honor the whole and create, like, I am loving that. I am valuing that, so to me, and would I choose to make sacrifices for those values and those ideals? Absolutely, I would. So I think I get perturbed when I see that bumper sticker. It's the distortion to me of what even is America in the first place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that is good. I'm reading in the live stream comments here. Dennis says, vote your faith as it informs you, not as a means to force your beliefs upon others. And I like that, and I get it, but I'm also sitting here thinking, but don't we sometimes have laws that say you don't get to dump your used auto oil into our river? Like, is that imposing my belief onto somebody else?
But I think what Dennis is saying is, like, let's say you have a strong belief that absolutely we should dump, toxins in the river. So go vote that. And I'm guessing that you're not going to be in the majority on that point of view. So when you lose on that issue, what you have to do is say, like, I value, trust, and respect those who have seen this differently. And because I do love my community, my county, my state, my whatever, I'm leaning in. I'm okay, I'm at peace. I'm aligned to this because I value these people who have chosen this path,
Yeah. I guess I'm processing out loud here. If I'm thinking like the Civil Rights Act probably wasn't a majority.
Now that's right. It's a really good point, right? Because it wasn't voted upon by the general public. It was moved by a representative body of people. And there are a lot of times when, if we're going with like public
sentiment, and Lyndon
sentiment,
Johnson had to use a lot of strong
absolutely. And so God, so many things to talk about. So this is why we got to keep talking about like over the next few weeks. But okay, so how do you usher about change, etc.? How do you usher about, whatever, freedom, right, civil rights, etc., if you have a majority of people who don't want to go in that direction? Then it's like, yeah, I mean, you do, like, our system allows people to muscle up and impose.
I think it'd be the many times I drove the car while you were on the phone saying, God damn it, to one of the city council members.
Yeah.
It's the right fucking thing to do. Check the data. It's the right fucking thing to do. I don't care what your party says. I don't care what you're right. It's the right fucking thing to do.
That's real. My kids weren't in the car. I didn't say that. I only said in front of my husband, not my kids.
And you said it well. Sometimes it's the only word that will work. Do you want to do a really quick what's on my mind before we go?
Oh, I do, because I have a really good one, but you're not going to like it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So do you want me to go first?
Yeah, I'm going to be not inspirational. So if you're going to be inspirational, you should go last.
Okay, you go first then.
So this is what's on my mind, because perhaps I either have ADHD or I'm a victim of too much, media content in my life. So I have a little bit of a squirrel brain happening tonight. And when you said elongatedly, which cracked me up. So like, to me, that's just funny that you're like elongatedly, which maybe it's a word, but what it came to mind for me is our kids who are now 21 and 25, they keep us young and hip. So they were telling us there's this like trend on social media to take names of famous people and like kind of expand them in a way that creates a bit of a mockery of what their persona is. Example, Mike Pence, apparently the kids call Michael Pencil, which I just think is like, doesn't need, Mike Pence, you just were like, oh, absolutely, that guy's a pencil, But then the funniest one to me was Elon Musk. The kids call him elongated muskrat. So that is what is on my mind tonight. And scene. You go.
I was just thinking I should probably talk about Chapel Roan, since we're both like addicted to her music right now, but I'll go a little more highbrow. And I just finished a podcast called Slow Burn. I think it's season 9. I've listened to several of the other seasons. This season was called Briggs versus Gays, or Gays versus Briggs. And it's about a battle on a Proposition 6 in California in the late 60s, trying to ban gay people from being able to teach in California, and a man named John Briggs trying to make himself famous by pushing for gay people to be banned from teaching in the 60s. And a very famous a guy who became famous on the other side of it, named Harvey Milk, who eventually would be assassinated in office as a supervisor in San Francisco. And it's just fascinating. And so when we're talking about the battles over LGBTQI plus people and the accusations that teachers are teaching kids to be gay, this isn't a new thing. This was happening back in the 60s, and it's really fascinating to listen how the battle went. And it's really interesting that it was Ronald Reagan, the governor of California, that ended up, not because he was pro-homosexual necessarily, or certainly not on the record, but he eventually put his support behind the no on 6 side, that the proposition failed, but also Briggs was behind the passing of the death penalty in California, which did pass that year. And so it's a really fascinating story, and also how Harvey Milk and George Moscone were assassinated, and Dianne Feinstein became mayor of San Francisco at that time. But one of the things I most remember from it was Harvey Milk saying, if teachers could make students be what they are, then we would have a lot more nuns in the world today.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, well, that's a good one. We also got a suggestion in the chat here from Dennis Flammy Grant. Is that a podcast or
no? That's a drag queen singer that sings.
So it's music.
Flammy Grant,
Flammy. Oh,
get it, Flammy Grant. Yeah.
Oh my, Flammy Grant.
Flemmy Grant.
Okay, good suggestion.
Flammy
all right.
Grant.
Well, listen, we have gone straight tonight, an hour and 10 minutes. We took no breaks. We had only one very subtle, merch prop with Paul lifting up his water bottle. So we're going to wrap up tonight. And let me just close it out by saying thank you so much for joining us. And if you're listening to this on the download, do try to join us live sometime. It's super fun. We have a lot of smart and interesting people live chatting and talking with one another. So that's really great. Thanks to some of you got to gather with Paul on Sunday night and talk a little more about Christian nationalism.
Oh, that's right. That was fun.
Thanks for your engagement there. You'll hear about things like this if you go to our website, evangelicalish.com, and make sure you've signed up. Just subscribe. Then you'll know if there are things coming up, when we're going on air, just whatever. Like stay in the loop at evangelicalish.com by subscribing. It is free. And if you like what we're doing here and want to help us out, feel free to support us as well $5.99 a month. Believe it or not, it's not free to do what we do here. We got to pay for stuff like subscriptions. We got to pay for whatever, all these different little software things we use. So we really could use the support, and we'll start talking a little more intentionally about like, we don't need a lot. It's like, we need like a couple hundred people to make a pretty small commitment. And that's going to make a big difference for our family as we're shouldering the burden to be bringing this content to all of you. If you value it, we would love your support. You can also learn more about that at evangelicalish.com. And tomorrow, once again, is Paul's birthday. Don't forget to leave some kind of promotion, your affirmation or whatever in your social media channels. Let's all talk about religious right, religiously wrong, and help see if we can get this book pushed out there a little bit more. So,
and if you're listening on the audio podcast, you may have missed right on my birthday, but go ahead. Still take a picture of yourself with the novel, put a video up with the novel, and just put it out there for your network.
That's right. Friends. We'll call it like the birthday season. Right?
Yeah, birthday season. Yes.
Okay. So that's going to do it for us tonight. Be sure to talk about this podcast with folks that you may be hanging out with this weekend as you're listening. Share this out. We are really trying to build the audience and appreciate everything you can do to help us with that.
Yeah, we had like 4,200 downloads last week. So that's really awesome.
That's really awesome.
5K this week. That would be cool.
What? Love it. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great week, and we will see you next time on evangelicalish.com.